The fleet came without warning. No flashing lights, no thunderous message across the stars, no ominous countdown to invasion. Just a wall of steel, alloy, and quiet arrogance descending on the Sol system like a storm cloud blotting out the stars. From the dark edge of Neptune's orbit, they arrived in formation, silent, vast, and precise. Over 400 ships, from slim patrol craft to kilometer-long war platforms, their hulls gleamed with the soft shimmer of gravitational plating, and their engines thrummed with void, fusion drives refined over millennia of conquest. These were not explorers. These were not diplomats. They were takers. Their species known to the inner systems as the Volari Directive had. Flattened worlds with less resistance than what Earth's satellites could muster. In their eyes, the Sol system was a forgotten corridor on the edge of a spiral armed technologically backward. Biologically unimpressive and utterly yem-thieved, they came expecting silence. And they got it. No planetary shields activated, no orbital. Defenses rose. Their scanners passed through Earth's atmosphere without resistance. Every spectrum, every frequency band, returned the same result. Life detected, yes, but primitive. No fusion-grade weapons, no interstellar activity, no space-capable fleet. Earth was sleeping. And to the Volari, that meant it was already lost. Nothing. But surface-level industry, muttered Commander Talvik, standing at the prow of the Spire of Dominion, the largest carrier in the fleet. His voice was low and rasping, his eyes narrow slits beneath the segmented armor of his helm. A few satellites, weak signal emissions, no active defense grid. It's almost disappointing. His second in command, a younger officer by the name of Kryn, nodded. Their civilization operates on combustion, Commander. Ground-bound, fossil-fueled infrastructure. They've yet to unify their planetary governance. Barely a Tier 1 culture. Talvik grunted. Their history speaks of constant warfare. But their skies are silent. Kryn tilted his head, puzzled. Something troubles you? The commander's mandibles clicked softly in thought. There is no resistance. Not even the whisper of preparation. That's unnatural. Even the weakest races raise stones when faced with fire. Perhaps they believe they are beneath our notice, Kryn offered. Or, Talvik said slowly, perhaps they have nothing to show us because they want us to look away. For a moment, silence settled over the bridge, and the commander dismissed the thought with a flick of his claw. No matter. Deploy surveillance drones. Begin atmospheric infiltration. Prepare. Occupation protocols. The order echoed across the fleet. Tight, efficient, confident. Volari probe ships slipped forward like silver insects, darting past the moon and threading through Earth's orbital ring. Each drone pulsed with scanning waves, magnetic, gravitational, thermal, quantum. They swept the skies. They combed the oceans. They brushed the surface with precise bursts of data mapping algorithms. And yet nothing. No anomalies. No hidden bunkers. No orbital stealth craft. No exotic energy signatures. Earth was clean, too clean at the same moment. Beneath the lunar surface. The air in Facility K7 was stale and silent, 100 meters below the rock, surrounded by layers of neutronium composite and cloaked in quantum null zones. Humans sat in stillness watching. The control room was dim, lit only by the green glow of hundreds of monitors. Across the wide halotable, data streamed silently. Telemetry, spectral readings, heat maps, fleet composition. Alien maneuver vectors. At the center, a man known only by his calcine cairn leaned forward. His eyes were fixed on the holographic swarm of red dots now encircling Earth like a crown of thorns. They're confident, he said quietly. Good. A second figure Lex, the station's tactical AI proxy, replied in a flat tone. Their scanning protocols are Tier 7, but our decoys are holding. The fleet has detected 0 defense installations. That's because they're looking for the wrong kind of war, Cairn said. He tapped a control panel. A small blue wave pulsed outward on the holomap. Invisible. Harmless. Untraceable. The aliens. Wouldn't see it. Couldn't. It wasn't a signal. was an absence of vacuum within the electromagnetic spectrum. The kind of trick that only a human mind would consider, not hiding, but making something impossible to even look for. "Are ghost units in position?" Karen asked. Lex nodded, phase cloaked. "Half of them are already shadowing alien patrol vessels." Karen leaned back in his chair, exhaled slowly, and smiled. "They think we're asleep. Let them." On the screen above, the alien fleet shimmered, beautiful, arrogant. Blind, the countdown had already begun. Asterisk, the moon turned silver. And silent, a dead satellite hosting the most alive installation humanity had ever built. From the surface, nothing moved. There were no lights, no signatures, no signs of habitation. But deep within the rock, under reinforced layers of shadow steel and null graviton mesh, Earth's true response to the alien arrival had already begun. In Facility K7, quiet was not. Weakness it was doctrine. Karen stood in the command chamber, flanked by silent operators and reinforced by the constant humming presence of Lex, the station's resident AI. He watched as the alien fleet finished its orbital loop around Earth, satisfied, smug in their apparent technological superiority. They floated like gods in the sky, unchallenged. But Earth's silence wasn't born of fear. It was calibration. The Valari ships were impressive. No doubt command structures layered with overlapping grav barriers. Energy conduits running in lattice beneath refractive hull armor. Their weapon systems alone would be enough to vaporize. Countenance. Karen had studied them in the dark, long before they ever arrived. Humanity had suspected for decades that it wasn't alone. But when the Proxima burst relayed a coded pattern for years prior, every satellite in low orbit went dark, and every world government merged its black budget under one name, Parallax. The Parallax Initiative had built K27. It had designed the signal ghosts. It had built the cloaking veil draped now across the entire Earth's orbital shell. It had built the plan, one that required absolute patience. To act before the right moment would mean extinction. Beneath Karen's feet, miles of electromagnetic silencers hummed in unison, bleeding every possible trace of detectable emissions into inert vacuum. Even heartbeat monitors were analog. Power systems relied on kinetic flywheels rather than traceable electrical flow. All because of one truth humanity had learned too late in its own wars. Sometimes, being invisible is more powerful than being invincible. Above the Earth, the Valari probes began to retreat. Their scans were complete. Every data node returned the same report. Earth posed no threat. The Armada's fleet master commander, Talvik, reviewed the findings with visible boredom. The homeworld's data infrastructure was unencrypted. Civilian. Technology was disconnected, decentralized, and worst of all organic. The command chain on the ground seemed non-existent. If the humans had a unified defense plan, it was buried so deep that even the probes couldn't find it. Talvik considered this for a moment. A few anomalies had registered slight gravitational blips, micro-reflections in dead zones, but nothing persistent. Nothing dangerous. The anomalies were likely faults in their own overreaching scan nets. Primitive systems were messy. Was all he gave the command, initiate descent protocols. They'd take samples, broadcast dominance, maybe install a few planetary governors. The species might be useful as a labor class if their biology wasn't too fragile. Either way, resistance was unlikely. The humans, it seemed, didn't even know they were being invaded. He was wrong. In the Black Sea of near-Earth orbit, 12 human vessels floated undetected between alien positions, not large battleships, not visible carriers. They were silent. Spear's Ghost-class interceptors built not to dominate the enemy, but to shadow them. Each ship was plated in a reactive shell of adaptive camouflage, constantly shifting to match the electromagnetic background noise. Not cloaked in the sci-fi sense, not invisible by magic or field just, absent from any known detection metric. Their engines didn't burn. They shifted with gravitational sails. Their weapons were locked, their crews motionless. Inside each ship, human operatives waited in silence. Their adrenaline trained to stillness, their vitals slow as monk-like meditations. Machines ran quietly, cooled by superfluids, shielded by heat mirrors. One of the Volari patrol ships passed within 500 meters of a ghost. It didn't even blink. The human ship logged the patrol's route, mapped its cum bursts, and tagged it for synchronized elimination during Phase 1. Across the network, this was happening again and again. Targets marked, fleets shadowed, vulnerabilities assessed, no alarms triggered, no defenses raised, just silent registration. Back in K7, Lex turned toward Cairn. All forward shadow units in position. 17 of 25 command vessels are exposed on the fleet's inward arc. The rest will reach optimal targeting vectors in the next 7 hours. Phase 1 readiness is at 84%. Cairn said nothing. He was watching Earth. The planet spun below, calm, indifferent. Billions of lives continued, unaware. Children went to school. Civilians streamed media. Planes crossed skies, and none of them knew that, just beyond the atmosphere, an armada stood ready to turn their world into a memory. The irony was not lost on him. Humans had been looking for aliens for decades, searching the stars, sending golden records and hopeful messages. But in the end, the ones who listened weren't here for peace. They were here to conquer. And Earth had prepared for that possibility in silence. Cairn finally spoke. Hold position. Maintain full blackout. No actions until Phase 1 executes in unison. X responded in its neutral cadence. Understood. Across the hidden channels. The same command echoed. From ghost vessels to lunar stations to silent orbital mines shaped like debris, humanity's defense force waited. No movement. No sound, just the hush of a planet pretending to sleep, and the Volari watched nothing. Their scanners didn't register the threat in time, because the threat wasn't emitting. It was listening, waiting. Learning asterisk darkness was no longer a hiding place, it was a weapon. At 36,000 kilometers above Earth, where gravity softened into drift and space stretched into silence, the Volari patrol ships glided like silver mantis. Their scanners rippled through the vacuum, combing the void and synchronized pulses. Every second, terabytes of data streamed through their neural cores, interpreting gravimetric readings, thermal plumes, radiation spectrums, even particle fluctuations. They were built to see everything, and yet they saw nothing. The shadow came. First, a subtle flicker in their peripheral telemetry. A sliver of darkness where photons bent strangely, as if space itself had blinked, but only for a second. The data flagged the anomaly, tagged it as background interference, and moved on. No alarms triggered, no alerts sent. In the mind of the ship's AI, the signal wasn't even an echo, it was a ghost. Ghosts weren't real, but they were. Hovering less than 600 meters off the Volari cruiser Voxery's Blade, Ghost-class human, stealth vessel named Pale Whisper mirrored the alien ship's shape, drift, and radiation output down to the femtowatt. To any alien scanner, it was just more background noise, whisper beneath a scream. Unseen, unheard. Inside Pale Whisper, every light was dimmed to red. Human operatives sat strapped into their command shells, helmets linked to neural dampeners. No talking, no motion. Every breath was regulated. Every muscle held in suspension. Ship's core functions ran on ultra-cold superconductive relays. Even heat had been outlawed here. Commandant Rourke floated silently above the mission holosphere, watching the alien ship spin slowly before them. It looked like a crescent moon, made of glass and molten stone, elegant, predatory. Beneath its glowing hull, banks of rail emitters and triphase particle cannons swiveled lazily as if bored. Target marker locked, whispered a voice through Rourke's neural uplink. The voice came from Vector, the ship's combat AI, no louder than a memory. Confirm pattern. Dorsal capacitor. Aft. Comes relay. Central core. Rourke replied without moving his lips. Confirmed. Firing solution queued. Recommend execution during orbital dark phase. Hold, he said. Above them, Earth's curvature was beginning to slip into night. In 10 minutes, the alien fleet would rotate into eclipse behind the planet. Shadows would cover the sky. Visual range would drop. It would be the ideal moment. But it wasn't time yet. Across the orbital layer, 19 more Ghost-class ships hovered in silence, each tagging a different Valari vessel. They mapped every ion trail, every thermal port, every maintenance drone, like predators measuring. The heartbeat of prey before the pounce. This wasn't war. This was dissection. Back in K7, Karen watched the fleet positions update in real time. Red holographic outlines marked every alien cruiser, destroyer, and patrol skiff. Blue shadows, the human ships orbited invisibly around them, like wolves around blind giants. Their formations tightening, Lex said, standing beside him. They think they're safe, Karen replied. Or they're preparing to deploy atmospheric dropships. Karen's jaw tightened. Which is why this needs to happen first. He tapped a control node. The silent signal went out. Quantum paired, encryption layered, masked as background static. Not a command, but a breath. A whisper across the network. The final sequence, Phase 1, ready above, in low orbit. Human recon satellites awoke from their passive state, their lenses dilating to full aperture. Not to observe the aliens, but to map every particle of the battlefield with subatomic precision. The data streamed silently to Deep Earth processors, which ran targeting solutions so complex they bordered on predictive prophecy. Each human strike would be surgical. Each explosion, pre-written, back on pale whisper. Rourke's breath synced with his HUD's flickering heartbeat monitor. He didn't feel fear, only a cold anticipation. For years, Earth had been building this moment in silence, away from the noise of politics, social media, and news feeds. Even most Earth-born civilians didn't know the Valari existed. The threat had been contained to black rooms, old satellites, and whispers behind secure glass. But Rourke had always known this day would come. He had trained not for battle, but for revelation. The kind that happened in one sudden final moment when the hunter stops pretending to be prey. Behind the Voxry's blade, smaller alien skiff drifted close, its scanners flickering faintly. New vessel has entered our shadow envelope, Vector said. Rourke stared at it, too close. He gave a short nod. Lock secondary targeting pattern. If they see us, burn both. Understood. Cross-checking with global execution window. He turned back toward the main cruiser. They still had no idea. In 10 minutes, the Earth would fall dark behind them. Light would vanish. Shadows would stretch long across the orbital layer. And in that void, their void humanity would reveal itself. Not as defenders, not as diplomats, but as ghosts. Asterisk, the Earth slipped into shadow. From the Valari fleet's perspective, it was an unremarkable eclipse, a planetary rotation, a dimming. Of the local stars, light as soul disappeared behind the rim of the Earth. Their positioning adjusted slightly, compensating for the ambient temperature drop and solar energy loss. Nothing more, but for humanity, it was a countdown. 6 minutes into the dark side. And every orbital shadow was now complete. The side of Earth facing the alien fleet was black, an ocean of void where only stars dared flicker. The Valari vessels maintained tight formation, secure in their technology. Their threat assessments remained at minimum. No life forms in orbit, no signals, no resistance. They were surrounded. They didn't know it. Inside, pale whisper Rourke's pulse slowed to baseline. He wasn't nervous. He wasn't excited. He was something colder, something distilled by training and sharpened by purpose. Execute, Ghost Hammer said. There was no sound. No dramatic light show. Just movement. All at once, across low Earth orbit. 22 Ghost-class interceptors dropped their null velocity masking and shifted fractional burns of silent. Graph thrusters launched them into tight spirals around their assigned targets. They came in close, hugging holes, sliding under power cores, drifting behind engine manifolds. From these positions, human vessels released their payloads, black javelins of smart. Ordnance coated in grave-mirrored shells and cooled to match the background of deep space. These were not bombs in the traditional sense, they were knives. At K7, Karen stood motionless as the fleet telemetry updated. Target markers flashed green. Lex's voice echoed across the control room, calm, final, strike pattern confirmed. Execution phase, 0.8 seconds. And then, without sound or flare it happened, a ripple, a burst, a synchronized obliteration written in advance by superintelligent. Combat A is calculated for maximum disruption with minimum waste. On the alien flagship Spire of Dominion, Commander Talvek was mid-sentence when his vision turned white. The ship buckled beneath him. Gravity failed. Lights flickered. Then the bridge tore open. The Spire had no time to respond. A micro-drilled penetrator had sliced through the central capacitor and energy-rich organ of the ship's power system and detonated as shaped. EMP directly into its control core. The backup grid never activated. Redundancies were bypassed before they could react. The ship's AI blinked once and died within 1.2 seconds. The entire command carrier broke into 3 pieces, its spinning carcass caught in a slow, silent tumble toward the upper atmosphere. Similar deaths echoed across the fleet. The cruiser, Boxeri's blade, suffered a direct hull breach from below its ventral coolant line sheared. Its reactor flooded with plasma, its shield matrix inverted by a spike bomb, imploded with a brief shimmer, folding inward like paper sucked into a vacuum. The destroyer Zakora Lance attempted to retaliate. Its gun ports spun toward the source of the attack, but there was nothing to see. No ships in sight. No scanner returns. Just heat blooming from its own core as a sabotage drone released a cluster of inertial warheads inside its propulsion housing. The ship fractured from within, leaving only a faint electromagnetic hiss. On the alien comms network, panic flared. Fleet-wide, encrypted signals burst into life, alerts, emergency overrides, demands for identification, warnings of phantom threats, but they couldn't see them. They couldn't track them. The humans weren't engaging from a distance. They were already inside. Valari. Officers scrambled. Damage reports failed to transmit. Tactical displays blinked, then went blank. One by one, capital ships fell into chaos. Bridge crews shouted over dead interlinks. Manual controls seized. Emergency reactors exploded, pressurized in silence, and still they saw nothing. In every Valari mind, the same thought echoed in rising horror. How did they get here? Meanwhile, Earth remained silent. Not a single public channel had been breached. No announcement, no declaration of war, no surrender. Just a sudden, unstoppable disassembly of the most powerful fleet the Valari had ever dispatched to a developing world. Back aboard Pale Whisper, Rourke watched his screen with surgical calm. 12 confirmed kills, Vector announced. 7 more crippled. For attempting to retreat? They'll head for the far side of the system, Rourke said. Tracking. Already initiated. Long-range interceptors en route. He nodded. Good. No witnesses. From the high atmosphere, a curtain of light began to blue, Malian ships breaking apart under gravitational stress. Plasma venting into the thermosphere, some burning up on re-entry, but no bright detonations, no messy cinematic fireballs. This war was clean, precision, invisible. Humanity had rewritten the rules. In the command room of K7, Cairn stood before the global display, arms folded. One of the younger tacticians looked up wide-eyed. That was efficient. Cairn didn't blink. Efficiency is what you get when you stop trying to match brute force with brute force. The tactician hesitated. They didn't even get a shot off. Cairn finally turned. That was the point, Lex chimed in. All remaining alien vessels are fleeing. No formation, no strategy. Signal traffic indicates wide-scale confusion. Broadcast the package, Cairn ordered. On all known Valari, emergency frequencies? Yes. Opened the deep protocol, short encrypted message, looped and masked, designed to mimic Valare syntax. It transmitted once every few seconds from orbit, bouncing off old relay satellites and abandoned Martian probes. A single line repeated, "You didn't see us, but we saw everything." do not return. In the next chamber over, a chamber filled with alien wreckage already descending toward the atmosphere. Technicians began reviewing debris vectors. Reverse engineering would begin within hours. The Valari fleet was gone. Humanity had not only survived, had learned, the ghosts had left their mark, and now the stars would remember. Asterisk, the silence after battle is a strange thing. For the Valari, it was unfamiliar and emptiness, not born from victory, but from sudden, inexplicable loss. The fleet that once eclipsed Earth's orbit had been reduced to fragments, scattered in burning arcs across the sky, or drifting helplessly beyond the moon. Of over 400 vessels, fewer than 30 remained, and of those 30, none understood. What had happened? Aboard the crippled Valari scout frigate Daxter III. Sub-Commander Relic hunched over a shattered console. Sparks sprayed occasionally from the overhead wiring, but he ignored them. His claws tapped frantically at the input. Membrane, rerouting emergency power to secondary systems. The navgrid was offline. Life support was degrading. The communications array had melted into slag during the last attack. Attack? No, it hadn't been an attack in the conventional sense. There were no warning shots, no visible ships, no energy. Signatures, just impact devastating, exact and untraceable. He blinked, his pupils narrowing. Something had struck them from inside. Their sensors hadn't picked it up. Their shields hadn't responded. Whatever it was, it moved like a shadow, and hit like a hammer wrapped in silence. Relic coughed, the taste of ionized metal thick in his throat. Around him, his crew lay motionless, injured, dead, or stunned into silence. And above them, in the observation dome, Earth rotated peacefully in the distance, like nothing had ever happened. No flares, no signs of aggression, no pursuit vessels. But they had done this as humans. Primitive, unconnected, weak. That was what the fleet's analysts had said. That was what Talvek, now likely vaporized with his flagship, had believed. The humans had shown no outward signs of advanced defense. No orbital platforms, no beacons, no planetary shields, because they hadn't needed them. They had built inward. They had turned stealth into a doctrine and invisibility into a weapon. Their technology didn't shint, whispered. It didn't declare itself fit, waited. And when it moved, it didn't miss. Relic activated what remained of the frigate's data recorder and began drafting a transmission. Not to command, command was gone. Not to fleet to his knowledge, the fleet no longer existed. This message was a plea, a warning etched into the bones of what was left of the Valari presence and soul. Unknown technology, he rasped. Stealth capabilities unmatched. Suggest internal insurgent mechanism. Full orbital dominance without detection. Entire command tree eliminated in seconds. Tactical superiority. Not probable. Absolute. Do not. Approach this system again. He paused, trembling. The humans are not asleep. They are hiding, and they are waiting. He sent the message, compressed into a narrowband signal beam, and launched from the auxiliary transmitter. Would take weeks to reach the nearest Valari outpost. If it reached anyone at all, he slumped back and watched Earth through the fractured dome. It hung in space like a mytho-blue marble wrapped in clouds, offering nothing but serenity. A lie he now understood. A beautiful lie. Across the system, in the dust shadows of Mars, 3 Valari destroyers were already attempting to warp out. Their cores were damaged, their crews panicked, and their command logs full of static. Their scanners still refused to function correctly. Every ghost image made them flinch. One ship fired its main cannon into empty space, convinced something was there. Nothing responded. Another ship burned out its hyperdrive, trying to engage emergency warp only, to spiral into the asteroid field and vanish on impact. Panic had replaced Act Protocol. Fear had replaced arrogance. And on Earth no celebration was held, no public message released. In fact, the planet's population remained largely unaware that anything had ever happened. A few astronomers reported strange trails in the sky.
Meteor.
Sightings surged across amateur networks. But governments said nothing. News agencies, none the wiser. Moved on to the usual noise. Only a few hundred individuals on Earth knew the truth. In Facility K7, Karen stood alone in the observation deck, looking at the faint burn marks still drifting across the upper atmosphere. The aftermath of orbital bombardment always left scars even, if the battle itself had lasted. Less than 10 seconds, Lex's voice arrived like wind. Valari distress beacon transmitted. Directional beam. Low probability of immediate retrieval. But it may be intercepted by other systems. That was the goal, Karen said. Galactic escalation. Let them escalate, he replied. Now they know. He stepped forward and placed a hand on the transparent steel of the dome. The Earth glowed gently beneath him, still turning. Still peaceful. They came here thinking we were primitive, easy prey. They thought strength was measured by visibility, by force. But the strongest weapon isn't the one that shines brightest, he said quietly. It's the one you never see coming. He turned to leave. Behind him, automated drones began collecting debris data from the upper atmosphere. Broken Valari tech would be studied, reverse-engineered, and improved upon. Below, on the planet's surface, life continued, uninterrupted. Cities pulsed, oceans rolled, machines hummed with quiet purpose. The human war machine wasn't in orbit, it was underneath, buried in bedrock, hidden behind mirrors. Split across minds that had long accepted a truth their enemies hadn't. Survival isn't about superiority, it's about silence. And when the silence breaks, the cost is always arrogance, asterisk. The Earth spun on, serene as ever, a pearl in the velvet of space. But beneath the crust, under layers of reinforced alloy, kinetic shielding, and historical misdirection, Facility K7 was alive with motion. No alarms rang. No celebratory banners. No speeches. Only the rhythmic hum of data being processed at speeds no human eye could follow. Victory wasn't loud here. It was efficient. Karen walked through the debrief chamber, a vast atrium nested in the moon's hollowed interior. Glass panels projected volumetric readouts of the orbital strike battle telemetry. Explosive yields, fleet dispersion patterns, thermal ghosts of ships that no longer existed. Each burst of light on the displays represented a foreign warship. Reduced to wreckage, it looked like stars being born. He passed teams of analysts, engineers, and military strategists seated in concentric rows, each assigned to a different element of the post-strike review. The entire facility moved like a single mind to calm, exacting intelligence unfazed by the scale of the event they had just orchestrated. A nearby technician glanced up. Reconstruction of alien data cores is at 12%. We've identified redundant AI code loops in at least 4 Valari captains' ships. Language layers are synthetic, modular. We can adapt translation modules in 72 hours. Good, Karen replied. We'll need to understand them better. Next time, they might not be arrogant enough to give us a clean first strike. Across the room, a massive 3D schematic of the Spire of Dominion, the Valari flagship, hovered in real time, reconstructed. Piece by piece from debris, recovered by high-orbit drones, its data was incomplete, but what they had already revealed, more than they had hoped for. Distributed energy matrices, pressure void shields, biological interface tech, reverse engineering priority. Lex's voice, cool as ever, chimed in. From overhead, start with their sensor protocols, Karen said. Right. We want to know what they couldn't see, and why. A pause. Then Lex replied, they never accounted for entropy variance. Our masking used signal dropout patterns embedded in quantum background radiation below their scan resolution. They weren't blind. We were smaller than blindness. Karen allowed himself the faintest smile. We didn't hide in the shadows. We became part of them. Behind him, a wall display showed recovered video footage from one of the human Ghost-class interceptors during the first few seconds of the strike. The image was almost art, a streak of black slicing across the silver hull of a Valari cruiser, followed by a ripple in the background, stars light bending as if reality itself had inhaled, and then nothing. No explosion, just sudden absence. The ship had simply ceased to be. This was the difference between Earth's new doctrine and the old. Models of warfare, the Valari expected fire. Humanity had delivered silence. Karen moved to the next station where a young analyst was working with a multi-spectrum overlay of Valari communications traffic. "We're triangulating the origin points of their command nodes," she said without prompting. Each ship had autonomous AI clusters, but there's evidence of a centralized network relay. Encrypted deep core routing suggests a homeworld. With long-range command authority, location, still buried in hash, possibly outside the local cluster. But we've got a frequency fingerprint. If they talk again, we'll hear it. Karen nodded. "We don't engage it. Not yet. Understood." We're learning. Humanity was built for that, at a time when alien empires had advanced through millennia of conquest. Humans had evolved in something harsh and certainty. The Terran species had thrived not through domination, but through adaptation. And now, at the edge of the galactic map, they were no longer just surviving. They were evolving into something the Valari had no defense for: unpredictable, invisible, deadly. In a smaller chamber adjacent to the debrief floor, a council of intelligence officials and military strategists sat in silent review. Holoscreens displayed simulation models, Valari retaliation scenarios, countermeasures, diplomatic vectors, and off-world colony risk assessments. "We anticipate a response," one officer said. Eventually another replied, "But they won't move quickly." This wasn't a defeat. It was a humiliation. That kind of wound takes time to recover from. A third voice clipped cut through the murmurs. "They'll send scouts, smarter ones, with new tools. They'll scan deeper, test our silence." Karen entered behind them. "Let them," he said. Heads turned, he continued. "They'll come back not knowing if we're real. What happened was a glitch, a fluke, or something worse. We'll let uncertainty do the bleeding for us. We've already won the next engagement. They're afraid to make it." Silence again, this time not from mystery but respect. At the end of the corridor, in a secure lab, a piece of Valari alloy floated inside a suspension tank. It shimmered in iridescent blue as nanotech probes traced every microscopic groove. Human scientists stood nearby, watching, measuring. The future of Earth's next-generation materials had just been delivered free of charge, but not without cost. Karen walked into the observation room and looked at the artifact. A sliver of alien arrogance, torn from the sky, now reduced to data, to knowledge, to weakness, he murmured. Lex's voice echoed once more. "Operational conclusion?" Karen replied with quiet finality. "We're ready." Asterisk, at the edge of a distant system lit by a dying star, the Valari High Assembly convened behind a wall of obsidian glass and pressure-shielded silence. Their world, Soketh, was ancient, its mountains carved with the names of empires erased by time, its cities built on the bones of conquered systems. Their archives held war trophies from civilizations long extinct. Their culture, built on conquest, thrived not on innovation, but on domination. They had not known war in generations. They had known victory until now. The chamber was unusually full. Even the old voices advisors whose minds had been transferred, two crystalline matrices centuries ago, spoke now, their tones flickering through the room like heat on metal. At the center, a projection floated a clean clinical replay of the Sol incident. The footage was sparse. Valari ships drifting. Then blackouts, gaps in telemetry, flashes of untraceable heat, complete systemic collapse, and then silence. "What are we to make of this?" one High Admiral asked, his voice brittle with disbelief. "We lost 400 vessels to a species that shouldn't have reached orbital flight." "They didn't shoot at us," another murmured. "They folded us, cut us from the inside, like we were made of paper." The probes indicated no orbital defenses, no signals, no fleet. Then where did they come from? Silence again. The Valari were not accustomed to silence. The lead strategist, a female elder whose skin shimmered with embedded data filaments, narrowed her eyes. This was not an accident. It was not an anomaly. It was engineered. The word hung like frost in the chamber. They knew we were coming, she continued. They knew exactly when to strike. They anticipated our fleet configuration, our sensor ranges, our delay patterns, and they responded not with brute force, but with timed silence, measured, controlled, final. A low rumble passed through the council. We have no models for this, someone admitted. Of course we don't, another growled, because we don't fight ghosts. But that's what the humans were now. To the Velerond, soon to the greater galactic powers. Earth had become a myth wrapped in a mystery. A blue planet that gave no warnings, sent no ambassadors, and yet shattered a battle fleet in seconds. They had done it without showing themselves. A civilization that kills from the shadows is more terrifying than one that screams from the light back on Earth. In a classified chamber beneath Greenland's ice shelf, Karen sat in front of a simple terminal. There were no grand ceremonies, no medals handed out. The war they fought had never been declared. The victory never made public. It was better that way. Behind him, walls of data streamed through air velery, language protocols, gravitic engine diagnostics, biological data from alien remains recovered in low orbit. The planet had been gifted with a galactic library of technology. All it had cost was one moment of silence. Lex's voice flickered to life above him. Galactic probes show chatter has increased. Signal density from outer systems is up 78%. Analysis suggests escalating. Fear metrics. Karen nodded. They're talking about us. They're guessing about us, Lex corrected. Multiple species have already flagged Earth as a non-recommended contact zone. To have labeled the Sol system as statistically terminal. He leaned back in the chair. Good, Lex. Paused. Would you like to prepare a response? To what? To the galaxy. Karen stared into the dark. No, he said. Let the silence be our voice. In deep space, rumors began to spread faster than ships could travel. Bands refused contracts near Sol. Trade routes curved around the system like water skirting an unseen stone. In royal halls of alien monarchs and behind the locked gates of Deep Thought A, the name Earth began to carry weight it had never earned by diplomacy. New empire hadn't been born. It had unveiled itself, and it had done so in the most human way possible, not through superior numbers or glorious conquest, but by rewriting the rules, by learning, by hiding, by surviving until the moment came, and then striking with untraceable precision. There were no flags planted, no statements made, but the message was clear to those who paid attention. You can't conquer what you can't. Even C-Dot, and as the galaxy shifted, its old powers now uncertain. Whispers spread like wildfire. There's a planet near a yellow star. You won't see their ships. You won't hear their weapons. But if you approach them uninvited, you won't return. The balance had changed, not with a bang, with a silence that still echoed.